Well, let's go ahead and begin. It's good to see you today, and we're glad that you're here. Today we're going to be talking about don't stumble. God is closer than you think. You know, people stumble all the time. I mean, I'm a wreck. I mean, I have to watch myself. I'm always stumbling. But I haven't fallen down so much as I've just stumbled. But some people fall downstairs. They fall down on the floor. Flora falls up the stairs. I mean, she'll fall up. Most people fall down. But we need to be careful with our lives, because when we stumble, we put ourselves in jeopardy. So much of the time as people, as individuals, we forget how close God is. And so we live our lives, and sometimes we live without giving Him any recognition. Not even realizing how close He is, because He is close. And He loves us so much that He is concerned about every need of our lives. And so He knows a lot about us. But I think before we can actually talk about how to be intimate with God and how to make sure that He stays close to us, we need to talk about His sovereignty. The sovereignty of God is really His power and authority. That's what He is. He is a powerful God, perfect in all of His ways. You remember growing up in church, you learned that God is omniscient, omnipresent, and then, what is it? Come on. Omnipotent. And we learned that about God. And then as we got a little older, we learned more and more and more. But I think one of the best ways to know about God's power and authority is to look at the Psalms. They were written with that in mind. And most of them were written by David, although not all of them. And so let's look at the power and authority of God according to the Psalms. For instance, in Psalm 91 and 92, we find that God is above us. He is over us. And if you look at Psalm 91, beginning with verse 1, it says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty." Now that's important for us to understand, that if we dwell in the shelter, that is the protection of God, we abide in the shadow, in His shadow. We never leave His shadow. He's always with us. He says, "And because I dwell and because I abide, I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." Notice that the psalmist says, "I will say." Because He dwells and because He abides, He can say. Now, if He didn't dwell and if He didn't abide, He wouldn't be able to say it. See, these verses are connected. So when you're under the shelter of the Most High, you abide in the shadow of the Almighty, you can say, He is my shelter, my refuge, my God, and I trust Him. But so much of the time we're out on our own, aren't we? Yeah. We operate as if we have no problems at all, that God is some distant being. Some people don't believe that you can be close to God, and to the point where He can actually talk to you. And He does talk, and He does share. And look at the next verse. He says, "For He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence." Now, the pestilence would be COVID. God delivers us from it. Now, does that mean that we will not have problems with COVID-19? No, it does not mean that at all. We have to take precautions. We have to be careful. But if we do what we're supposed to do, and we walk with God, and we stay in His shelter, and we stay under His power, He protects us. Yeah. We don't have to worry about it. For instance, I deliver medicines to a group of senior adults on Thursdays and Fridays. And I freely go into their apartments, go into their homes. I talk with them about the Lord. I talked to one lady the other day who is dying, and she doesn't know Jesus, and I talked to her about it. But now when I go into an area where there's COVID-19, guess what I do? I wear a mask, because I don't want to give them any problems, but I don't want to get what they've got. So I don't do anything stupid. But I am confident that I am under His protection, and He will watch over me. So it goes on to say, He will cover you with His feathers. I think it's the NIV says pinions. or one translation says pinions. I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. It's feathers. He covers you with his feathers. You know, it's like when I was a boy. No, not when I was a boy. When I was a young pastor in McNairy, Tennessee, we had a country store that had a dirt floor. And Mr. D. Meeks ran the store. He'd had the store for years. He was an older gentleman at the time. And right in the middle of this store was this sugar barrel. How many of you know what a sugar barrel is? Just 2 of you? Some of you are lying. But right in the middle of the store was this big sugar barrel. And on top of this sugar barrel was a bunch of straw and a hen. And a little boy came in, about 10, maybe 9 years old, little red-headed boy. And he looked at that sugar barrel and he said, Mr. Meeks, why is that hen on top of the sugar barrel? And he said, well, Johnny, lift up the hen and take a look. So he put his hands around the chicken, he raised her up, and there under the hen were 3 little kittens. He stopped and he stepped back and he said, Mr. Meeks, I done ate my last egg. Well, God covers us with His wings. He protects us. He is our guardian. And under His wings we find safety. We find refuge. When we walk in the shelter of the Almighty, we have refuge. He takes care of us. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler. Now, we're not always faithful, are we? No. Nah. But He's always faithful. Yeah. And so His faithfulness is a shield. In other words, He is our protection. So He is our shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror by night, nor the arrow by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. God is above me. He protects me. So I can look up and He's there. I know He's there because He is my protection. Now,